Hello everyone, and welcome back to Isaiah from Mormons. Just a few housekeeping items of business before we really dive into it. I just wanted to mention that, like I have talked about before, even though this is called Isaiah from Mormons, I obviously am not affiliated with the church at all. This is just me going through Isaiah verse by verse, trying to help you guys to understand it and make some sense of it. I do things a little bit differently than other people do them. If you want a pretty standard, kind of the classic standard for Isaiah in the church is the book called Isaiah, Prophet, Seer, and Poet by Victor Ludlow. I periodically refer to it. I disagree with him about a lot of things, but some things he really nails. And he's going to be probably a more kind of standard reference. Um, but in some ways, that's why this is valuable. This is probably going to be little bit different than a lot of the other things that you hear or read about Isaiah from an LDS perspective. I do try to give a pretty solid historical background. Sometimes that feels not as exciting, actually, as a lot of the really cool interpretations that you get. So I would encourage you to go to other sources for other interpretations after you're done with this, if you are still interested in Isaiah after wading through all of this, and I hope you are. I would look at some other interpretations. The early Christian fathers had some very interesting things to say about Isaiah and about a lot of scriptures in the Old Testament. So and continue to look at other things. Obviously, the manuals are a good place to go. The church manuals on Isaiah, and there are lots of good places to go. So don't you should understand that this is going to be a little bit quirky because it's just me and the text. I periodically look at other things, but really it's just me and the text. So I'm going to be doing things a little bit differently. One thing also I should mention is last time we were talking about dating. Once again, that's kind of a quirky thing. I'm one of the only people that sees it that way as far as the dating of the text is concerned and authorship. But we really have no idea about that stuff, but that's just the best Isaiah scholarship and the Book of Mormon seem to suggest that, and so that's the model that I'm running with here. So once again, that is going to mean that it's a little bit different, but obviously that is part of the point. So I feel on the one hand that this is a pretty basic rundown, but it may also be a little bit different than some of the other things you hear. And in some ways, that allows it to be more kind of more basic and more kind of simple, which is once again part of the point. So I just wanted to mention that briefly before we jump into the discussion of Moab here. So, like I said, before we are done now with the Book of Mormon passages, and I'm going to be using the Septuagint, the Greek version, and the Dead Sea Scrolls and the standard Masoretic text, standard Hebrew text, piecing those things together to try to get a good picture of what we're looking at now with Isaiah as we continue. And right away, we run into some textual issues clarified by the Dead Sea Scrolls. So we'll talk about some of those things as we go along here today. And probably one of the first questions you're asking yourself is, why do I care? Right? Why should you care that Isaiah is sitting here roasting the Moabites? He's going to continue to do this kind of thing consistently, roast the various countries, all surrounding Israel. Why does this matter to us today? Shouldn't we just kind of jump over this part because how can it possibly be relevant to us? And I think the answer to that is that, like I said before, Isaiah is he doesn't really care where you're from. He's going to talk about issues no matter where you live. But I think he's preemptively dealing with another problem. When the Assyrians come to town, there's that question that arose, and we've talked about this before. Is the God of the Assyrians, and later the God of the Babylonians, are these foreign deities better than Jehovah? And ultimately, Isaiah, I think, is trying to say that the answer is no. If Jehovah is not going to save you from the Assyrians because of your wickedness, then definitely Chemosh, the god of the Moabites, or any of the other gods in the various countries around you are going to save you either. Your only hope is to repent, and Jehovah will save you, or you're up a creek without a paddle. And I think that's really what Isaiah is trying to say. He's trying to remind them that they only have one option. All these other countries around them are going to participate in the same fate as them because they aren't doing the things that they're supposed to do. So if Israel thinks that they can make alliances with their neighbors to try to save them, Israel and Judah, Isaiah says, it's not going to happen. They have one option and one option only. And the gods of the other nations are not equal to or better than Jehovah. They have to repent or they're going to get destroyed. So he kind of roasts the various nations all around Israel and Judah as a way of reminding Judah, by the way, you have no options. So even though it seems utterly irrelevant to us, I think we should remember that, yeah, this is relevant to us. These things are definitely relevant because in the final analysis, we're in the same boat. We similarly have really no other option but to rely on God, and we have to remember that. So let's just read the text here. It's a short chapter. There are some Dead Sea Scrolls sort of clarifications here. One of them is very key, so I'll talk about that as we go along. The burden of Moab. Because in the night Ar of Moab is laid waste and brought to silence, because in the night Kir of Moab is laid waste and brought to silence. He is gone up to Bajith and to Dibon, the high places, to weep. Moab shall howl over Nebo and over Medeba, and on all their heads shall be baldness, and every beard cut off. In their streets they shall gird themselves with sackcloth, on the tops of their houses and in their streets every one shall howl, weeping abundantly. And Heshbon shall cry, and Elealeh, their voice shall be heard even unto Jahaz. Therefore the armed soldiers of Moab shall cry out, and his life shall be grievous unto him. My heart shall cry out for Moab, his fugitive shall flee unto Zor, an heifer of 3 years old. For by the mounting up of Luhith with weeping shall they go it up, for in the way of Horonaim they shall raise up a cry of destruction. For the waters of Nimrim shall be desolate, for the hay is withered away, the grass faileth, there is no green thing. Therefore the abundance they have gotten, and that which they have laid up, shall they carry away to the brook of the willows. The cry is gone round about the borders of Moab, the howling thereof unto Eglaim, and the howling thereof unto Beer Elim. For the waters of Dimon shall be full of blood, for I will bring more upon Dimon, lions upon him that escapeth of Moab, and upon the remnant of the land. That's quite the judgment against Moab. But this, all of this is kind of one big pun. It feels like a whole bunch of place names, and you go, why do I care about a bunch of place names? But each of these place names he kind of puns with. Even the name Moab is kind of a joke. The Moabites may or may not have called themselves Moabites, that's difficult to say, but the etymology that the Israelites assigned to the name Moab, whether it is the name or not, is not exactly complimentary. You guys remember the story about Lot in Genesis, and how he takes his daughters up and they get him drunk and sleep with him? Okay, do you remember the children they had? Yeah, one of them was Moab. So in the Israelites' definition of the word, the name means her father, or rather from her father. Right, so obviously that makes sense in the Lot story, right? Moab is from her father. Kind of awkward, but that's probably where where the name comes from. At least the Israelite definition of the name. This might once again be kind of a joke that Moab actually derives from a completely different etymology, but the Israelites kind of assign it this etymology sort of as a joke. They do that sometimes with names, and that's just kind of what they do. So even from the beginning, there's kind of a joke with the name Moab, and so Isaiah will go through and kind of play with all these place names and sort of make jokes about all of the place names. One of those things where maybe you laugh so you don't cry. This is really kind of heavy stuff with the Assyrians coming in, and I think once again it kind of makes fun of these guys as a reminder that you think these other nations are going to save you? Not a chance, right? Kind of a reminder to not take these guys too seriously. So, so let's just look at it here. Pretty basic. The burden of Moab, because in the night Ar of Moab is laid waste and brought to silence. Because in the night Kir of Moab is laid waste and brought to silence. But probably it should be, look at the Dead Sea Scrolls, the burden of Moab, because in the night a city of Moab is laid waste. Excuse me, because in the night a city is laid waste, Moab is brought to silence. Because in the night Ar of Moab is laid waste, Moab is brought to silence. So when you look at the parallelism here, both Ar and city are the same word. So he's kind of showing that there's a little bit of a pun here. So in the night, the city is laid waste and Moab is brought to silence. Specifically, the city called Ar, which is the same word, city and Ar are the same word, the city called Ar has been laid waste and Moab is brought to silence. So it's kind of this reminder that, or kind of a laying of the groundwork that this whole chapter is going to be one big pun on place names. So I think he's kind of reminding you of that right off the bat. And by the way, if this particular installment feels a little choppy to you, that's kind of because it is. I have to jump back and forth between various Hebrew and English versions while I'm doing this, so it is a little bit. It's going to be a little bit disjointed. Hopefully not too disjointed. Anyway, so he continues talking, and kind of he's laid the groundwork sort of about this pun. So then he proceeds. The house or the temple is destroyed, and the high place pines away. So these are place names, Habite and Habamot, but they are also things. Habite is probably a reference to a temple. The Bamot is a reference to a high place, both of which are places where you offer sacrifice. So destroyed, so the temple is destroyed, and the high place pines. To weep upon Nebo, and now once again that's a real place, but this is also probably a pun. And during some periods, Nebo was a water deity, and I think during the Assyrian period he would have been considered a water deity. So the high place, the temple has gone away, and the high place pines away to give water to the water deity, right? To weep and drop water onto the water deity. So once again, kind of funny. Obviously, it first looks like, well, they're leaving the temples and the high places to go up and cry at this place called Nebo, but he's kind of punning here and making fun of these places, and showing ultimately that these temples that they've offered sacrifices on are going to be no good to them, and sort of crying on the water deities, giving water to the water deity, kind of making a joke about the total insignificance of these deities in the face of the Assyrian attack. Okay, so and to Medeba, and this is kind of funny. Medeba is like waters of silence or waters of calmness. So, and upon Medeba, the waters of silence, Moab will scream. Right? So at places that are usually supposed, probably once again cultic places, that are supposed to be all nice and quiet and serene, Moab will be screaming because of its fate. Okay? And that's probably where, once again, Hebrew is so kind of odd in the way that they arrange things. A lot of this would have been just one solid block of Hebrew. They will put in breaks, and in fact, they may have, the breaks may go back pretty far. When you look at the Book of Mormon, where they begin and end quoting things, those breaks actually correspond to some of the breaks in the Dead Sea Scrolls. The Dead Sea Scrolls breaks aren't perfect. They have lost some of those by the time they get there, but they preserve some of the breaks that you see in the Book of Mormon. So it's not like this is all one continuous thing. They do have breaks, but the sentences and the lines would not have had breaks. You would have really, really big, long paragraphs with breaks at the end. So this is one case where the breaks should come early. So they'll go up, and upon the waters of silence, Moab will scream. Then probably period. On every head is baldness, and every beard is shaved. So this idea of shame, really. So everything has been turned on its head. The high places are destroyed, and people are offering water, but people are still offering water to the water deity. How are they doing it? They're doing it by their tears. So Moab is at the waters of silence, screaming. Okay, and then it continues with this idea of everything being turned on its head. Every head is bald, is shaved, and every beard shaved. The idea that they're being taken into captivity. That's what they used to do when they take people into captivity, is to shave them completely. So then he proceeds here, talking once again about more things kind of being turned on their heads. In their streets they shall gird themselves with sackcloth. On the tops of their houses and in their streets everyone shall howl, weeping abundantly. Sackcloth is what you put on when you were in mourning, because it was really itchy, and it was a sign that you were grieving. It's really, really coarse fabric, generally used for making bags, hence sackcloth, right? And probably for other things during this period, but it's anyway very, very itchy, and so kind of supposed to be a sign of mourning. And it says that everywhere, on the tops of their houses and in their streets, everyone shall howl. Melting away into tears is what the Dead Sea Scroll adds. A very interesting image. And once again, adding to the idea of offering water to the water deity, kind of this strange reversal. So then he continues with the name puns. Then shall cry Heshbon, which is intelligence or contrivance, though, and can mean conspirator. So once again, place name, but it fits really well here. Then shall cry out the conspirators, and God will go up to the threshing floor. That's the next name. So the conspirators will cry out, and God will go up to the threshing floor. And this, once again, threshing floor, you have to understand, this is a kind of a cultural thing. Threshing floors were often at the entrances of cities. So think about when David buys the threshing floor to build the temple on. That threshing floor would have been at the entrance of Jerusalem. So a lot of times at the entrance of the cities, you have these threshing floors, and people meet there to have scenes of judgment, right? There was no real courtrooms. That's where the courtroom was the threshing floor at the entrance of the city. And so this appears to be a pun on that kind of thing. The conspirators will cry out, but God will go up to the threshing floor. So the conspirators are crying out, maybe sort of confessing, and God is going up to the threshing floor to hear them. So once again, kind of this interesting judgment. on the gods and on Jehovah. El, the god, is sort of one of the main deities, one of the main deities of the Canaanite pantheon, and of course the main deity for the Israelites is going up, and he's sort of judging at the threshing floor, sort of hearing the case. In some ways, the gods are kind of on trial. This is something that Isaiah is going to use later on. So the gods are kind of on trial. And so, going up to the threshing floor to hear them, and then it says, then is heard their voice. Therefore, Moab, the armed soldiers, or the military men of Moab, shall cry out. Their lives shall be grievous unto them. And here we have in the Dead Sea Scrolls, it's a little bit different. Each man's soul trembles within him. So, kind of interesting. It changes into sort of this judgment scene. The conspirators are crying out. God goes up to the threshing floor to hear their voices, and the soldiers are crying out. But each man's soul trembles within him. So, now this can be taken, and I think on one level it's definitely meant to be taken at a pretty basic level. All these places are having problems, and even the army is running away in front of the Assyrians. But also, the other idea is that this is not just the Assyrians. God is judging these people, and they're found wanting. And so everyone is afraid. The military realizes that they can't do anything against the judgment of the deity. And that's why they're afraid. That's why each man's soul trembles within him. So on one level, it's very basic. But on the other level, it's this idea that who can withstand God? And when he judges you, that's quite the issue. that's a real problem. Then he continues, my heart shall cry out for Moab. Even Isaiah is sort of pained at this. His fugitives shall flee unto, it's in the regular text it says, flee unto Zor and heifer of 3 years old, but the pun here is, will flee unto, or my heart shall cry out for Moab, his fugitives shall flee like a little heifer of 3 years old. Zor means little, and that name, heifer of 3 years old, is probably once again a place name. That may have been close to Zor, but once again he's kind of playing with the pun here of the place name. So his fugitives shall flee unto a little heifer or shall flee like a little heifer of 3 years old, for by the mounting up of Luhith, once again a place, but also possibly something meaning platter. Okay, so his fugitives will flee like a little 3-year-old heifer walking up onto a platter, right? Implication is about to get slaughtered, right? You have a little 3-year-old heifer. It's literally walking up onto the platter so it can get slaughtered and eaten, right? So by the walking up, so his fugitives shall be like a little 3-year-old heifer walking up onto the platter. With weeping shall they go up. Okay, so that's kind of the image here. Sort of making this pun about really being a sacrifice. A lot of the times when animals would be killed, it wasn't just killing. Almost all, every time an animal died almost, in many periods of Israelite history, that was considered a sacrifice. So once again, the religious nature of this is interesting, that sort of the gods are kind of being judged, found wanting, and there's a sacrifice being taking place. And who is the sacrifice? Well, it's the Moabites. Kind of interesting. So then he continues, and I would put a break there. For by them going up onto the platter with weeping shall they go up. Period. For in the or then really, then in the way of Horonaim they shall raise up a cry of destruction. There, Horonaim means the place of two caves. So, for in the place of two caves they shall raise up a cry that cleaves in two, is how I would probably translate that. So this is kind of a subtle break in the kinds of puns he's doing, because now he's talking about almost giving origins for the place names, that they'll be doing things that match the place name. So in the way of Horonaim, this put two cave towns. On that road, they will raise up a cry that cleaves it in half. Right, so two caves, right, torn in half. And once again, that word "torn" is kind of can be seen as something that happens with rocks to make kind of small caves. So he's kind of re-envisioning, kind of recreating the land via this destruction. For the waters of Nimrim shall be desolate, for the hay is withered away, the grass faileth, and there is no green thing. Nimrim there is the clear waters. So the waters of Nimrim, or the clear waters, shall be desolate. For the hay is withered away, the grass faileth, there is no green thing. It's kind of an interesting image. This beautiful clear water, this beautiful place, suddenly, via the destruction, there isn't going to be anything that's green and beautiful about the place. It's all just going to be terrible because of what's coming upon them. Therefore the abundance they have gotten, and that which they have laid up, shall they carry away to the brook of the willows. In the Dead Sea Scrolls, this is the brook of the Arabs. So you can see the direction that they're going. They're fleeing away south, just trying to get away, escape the destruction of the Assyrians. For the cry has gone up round about the borders of Moab, the howling thereof unto Eglam. So that would be like Two Springtown. So they're crying into Springtown, they're crying into the two springs. They're howling thereof into the well of the champions, Bir Elim. So once again, it's almost like they're filling up the waters with their own tears. So once again, going back to kind of comments on the gods with Nebo, which of course is a real mountain, but also kind of giving water to the water god by crying into it. We're seeing the same thing here. They're filling up these cisterns and these springs with their own tears. For the waters of Dimon shall be full of blood. And Dimon, that in the Dead Sea Scrolls, that's Dibon, which is probably correct. We saw that earlier in the chapter. Dibon appears to be the capital of Moab. So it says the waters of Dibon shall be full of blood. And that's something obviously that would happen when the Assyrians come in and kill everyone. But also, that's one thing that intentionally would happen. A lot of times people would kill animals and or people and throw them into the springs and the wells to poison the wells so that you can't drink out of them. And even in the early 1900s during World War I, we were seeing this kind of thing happening. So this is a very consistent practice in the Middle East and just kind of generally. So for the waters of Dimon shall be full of blood, probably intentionally, and like I said, that should be Dibon, not Dimon, the capital of Moab. For I will bring more upon Dibon, lions upon him that escapeth of Moab, and upon the remnant of the land. So once again, the idea of water, and probably a lot of these would have been sacred places to them, at least some of them. So the waters being filled with blood, I think is a very interesting image. All this that they had relied on, they thought that their place was so great, they thought everything was going to be fine, and now all their wells and springs are full of dead bodies. And all these gods they thought were going to save them clearly did not. They were judged by El, by God, and they were found wanting. So the waters of Dibon shall be full of blood, for I will bring more upon Dibon. And then there's this interesting comment: lions upon him that escapeth of Moab, and upon the remnant of the land. Now this happens quite literally later on. When the Assyrians come in, they export a whole bunch of people back to various places, and they bring in other people to settle. The problem is the whole idea of the regional deity, right? They start to have a lion infestation. This sounds totally crazy, but this is in the scriptures. You can look it up. They have a lion infestation, and so they say, well, what are we going to do about the lion infestation? We need to bring some people that worship Jehovah back, because since Jehovah is the regional deity for this area, we have to keep him happy so the lions don't kill us all. So I'm totally serious. So they import a whole bunch of people, kind of priests really, back to reinstitute the worship of Jehovah in some form, so they can appease him, so the lions will go away. And so that's what they do. So literally this happens. For I will bring more upon Dibon, lions upon him that escapeth of Moab, and upon the remnant of the land. That's something that literally happens. But kind of interesting, once again, showing that he's the best. That God is the only one that can take care of this situation. You think that when you've come in and conquered this place that you'll be able to control it? No, I still control it. You want the lion infestation to go away, you better worship me. Now these guys are actually the ancestors of the Samaritans, and so they don't necessarily worship quite the way they should. But this is a very interesting comment, I think, because this is once again exactly what happens, and shows that no matter what these people are thinking, God is the one they need to worship, and if they don't, things will not go well for them. Ultimately, I think that's what this chapter is all about. This idea of God judging the nations and God judging the gods of other nations is going to come up again in Isaiah. And I think there's a reason that this comes close to the beginning of this sort of judgment on the nations. I think it's a reminder that this is exactly what's happened. That God has sort of judged all the other deities and found them to be false deities. He's the only one that really controls what's going on here. That's why he pokes fun at Nebo and various other deities in here, implicitly making fun of Chemosh, the deity from Moab, showing that nothing else can save them. And I think from today's perspective, really, we need to realize that God is in control. It may not seem like it all the time, but we need to trust God enough to know that he's in control, to know that he's going to take care of us. It didn't seem necessarily like he was in control here, but Isaiah is saying, no, even when it seems like he's not, he's in control. Be patient with him, trust him, and he will come through. Even when it seemed like the Assyrians had totally taken over and everything was in disarray, God sent a little reminder in the form of big hungry lions that he was indeed in control. And I think that's something we need to remember today. So anyway, that's the end of chapter 15 here. There's only 9 verses, but there were lots of puns, so it took a while. Next time, we will deal with some more about Moab. So we'll see you guys next time.